Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast!
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a show on Tuesday presented by Silverline. I am your host, Tim TK, associate editor at Silverline and producer of this show. And I am joined this week by Mr. Quentin Bedwell.
Everybody,
All right.
I am the co-host
Yeah.
of that Tuesday show, or that Silverline Tuesday show.
Yes, and we are, of course, as always, brought to you by Daytona Beach Comic Convention, DaytonaBeachComicConvention.com. Go to the website, get your tickets. That is going to be next month, the 18th and 19th. We will be there. We will have a stand. You can buy our stuff. Please buy our stuff. We need your money. That makes us make more comics. And it is a fairly democratized process. We get your analytics, we know what sells, and we make more of that. Whatever you don't buy, we know you don't like, so we stop making it.
Mm-hmm. And we fire everyone involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or we just put them to work in the penal legions that work under mind control programs.
Yes.
And we are going to be talking this week about creating characters for comics. And hopefully you can excuse the weird quality on my webcam. I'm not sure why I decided to only half work, but it's only halfway there. Hey, Mr. Stephen Brown, needed to not. You were here just in time. We are just getting started. It is the 8 Pacific Standard Time show because we are the West Coastians here. And Quentin is an honorary West Coastian there. Well, I mean, I guess it's technically the West Coast, just maybe a gulf away or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not quite on the timeline, but, you know,
Yeah.
I don't mind staying up a little bit.
And we are going to be at this time regularly, as opposed to the other groups that are all East Coast based, because they just can't groove or jive with us on the West Coast. Exactly. So, like I said, this week we're talking about creating characters. I'm going to be offering the writer's perspective. Quentin will be offering the artist's perspective, although we both dabble a bit in the other. And we'll just kind of see where it goes from there. It's going to be very natural, very free-flowing. As I like to keep things here, it usually turns into some sort of diatribe or off-topic meander. Yes, but that's why people love us. And we're just gonna kind of get
Either way, by the end of this stream, we'll all be better people, and so will you. We'll be more well-informed and
exactly
and just better all the way around.
Exactly. It's like the TV show 9 Perfect Strangers. We're here to give you a therapeutic healing experience in terms of your creative abilities.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just touch the screen.
Just touch the screen. Alright. Let's see, Brown again on YouTube. I finished my first comic a couple days ago, and now I'm trying to line them on InDesign. Any advice? It's been a while since I've done InDesign.
It's been literally years since I've used InDesign. Yeah.
It sounds
it's good.
It's good.
It's good. I remember it
Yeah.
being good.
And our printer also uses InDesign, as well as our the editors, everyone who does the actual going to print part of it. The nice thing about working in a company is that we do our parts and we're done. But if you are making your own comic, you're it. The buck stops with you. So yeah, using InDesign. If you have someone who has a lynda.com login, I remember there being a good tutorial on there. That's how I first learned. But I haven't touched it since I was a letterer. And so we use that to kind of... We'd do the lettering in Illustrator, and then in InDesign we'd flatten. We'd get all the layers and actually flatten it and then hand it off to the printer. YouTube also provides some good tutorials. If you can find... man, it's been a while. I can't remember the good resources that I used. But I think there is like it's like Adobe Pro, Adobe Wiz, something like that. They do a bunch of tutorials for all the different Adobe programs, and InDesign is one of them.
Yeah, there's loads and loads of that stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. So I'd recommend checking out there first. And give yourself some grace with it too. Anytime you're using new software, it's going to be... Give yourself several hours to just dink around and learn it. Yeah. Like, anytime you get something... anytime I get new work software for whatever reason, I just spend a little bit dinking around. I get some random test file going, and I'll spend a day or a couple hours just messing around, seeing what everything does, trying to get more familiar with all the different things on the interface.
Get a stuffed animal. And, whenever you really get stressed, just beat the fire out of it.
Yeah. Or, just get a solid, like, opaque drinking mug like this one. So that way no one can see that it's filled with whiskey or gin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't know that you're just having to blast through it. But yeah, anytime you get something new, it's gonna be a little bit of pain, a little bit of deking around. You'll get used to it, and by the end of it, you'll feel like a pro, and you'll be selling your services as a InDesign flatter or printer for all the money on Fiverr. Definitely. And honestly, I'd recommend that. Like, if this is your first time making a comic for yourself, and you feel comfortable with any of the skills picked up, start selling those skills on Fiverr. Make some money, because other people are not going to have the same patience you have.
Yeah. Yep.
Alrighty.
I will share my screen.
Okay.
Tonight I'm working on a Facebook banner for Night Rise. Boom.
And we'll
There we
pull
go.
that up there. Beautiful. Man, that is a glorious helmet.
Yeah. I wish I need to build this. I've built some other helmets, like Iron Man helmets and stuff like that. I might just do that. I might just build this eventually.
We're going to put on Indiegogo. Excellent. Yeah, Indiegogo is a great storefront for any sort of self-made comic.
Oh yeah, there's people who use Kickstarter and Indiegogo. There's some that won't use both. Like they'll either use one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indiegogo definitely has the strength, especially if you're just a one-man band where you don't have your own online marketplace. We're aided by the fact that our printer does have an online marketplace that we can set up a storefront on. But Indiegogo, being able to use that both as your initial funding and as your marketplace after that, it saves you a lot of overhead. And at some point, if you can, I don't know the entire process, but you can self-publish also to Comixology. I don't know how well sales will go there because it is bloated, but it gives you a digital copy, so in case they ask you if you have digital, it's there. Or even just have PDFs available on your Indiegogo. That too is an option. So this.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, this kind of lead itself into a nice way of getting on subject tonight. So creating characters, we're going to talk about the visual and the writing that goes into it. and the teamwork that goes kind of behind that. So with Night Rise, you have some very visually dynamic and visually unique style characters, obviously. And you're working with a writer on this project. So did you these characters are how was the creation process on these characters? Did you get notes from the writer on essentially like this is my general vibe, or was it just like they actually like described the visual aspects of it and then told you to match those in your style, or was it just here's a character, make them?
Well, the writer of this is Mackenzie Workman, and she sent me some kind of loose descriptions, just some kind of thoughts that she had about, certain ones. Mainly, what she was doing is telling me what they did, what they were, where they were from, and all of these things that she explained to me in written form just kind of gave me a springboard to make, I just flooded her with a lot of concept art and just said, hey, what do you like about this one, this one, this one? If there's any that you want to put together or whatever, we can do that. But really, I mean, it really just came together. I don't know how often this happens, but because usually I've done my own characters. Mm-hmm. But she and I just meshed like immediately. Like our creative, I mean, we had kindred spirits in the realm of creativity, and it's like she would say something, and I would get a mental picture like almost immediately, and it was really awesome the way all that worked out. And I was really scared about the process because, like I've said, I've only really been familiar with doing my characters. I've done commissions for people on concept type stuff, but with this many characters, you're pretty much populating the world that the writer is making. And so you have to, everything is being born. Everything, every person that's going to show up, every building, every style of armor, weapons, lore, all that. You're coming up with it. So it just, I did that first one, and I think really everything just became a derivative to some extent off of the first one. The first human I did, the clothing and all that kind of stuff just kind of branched out. And then whenever I did some of the creatures that are in this book, I did that first one, and everything else just seemed to spring off of it. And she just really liked, everything that I did. And I was really impressed with what I did, not because I'm tooting my own horn or anything, but just because I have not often done a lot of concept character creation with other people, and I was really scared about how it was going to go. And when you are doing your own characters, a lot of times you are kind of in a box, and it's right here, and you don't have like the left side of your brain and the right side of your brain arguing with each other, or not enough. Anyway, you don't have anybody objective to come along and say, I don't know. So you have to ask people, and sometimes, I don't know about you, but it's kind of hard for me to get input sometimes. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I just see stuff one way, and but with this, with two people working on characters, her giving me a little bit of description, me doing the art, it really worked out well because we were able to come up with something that neither one of us could actually say, I did this. It was something that came out of both of us. And it was just a really cool process. It was really, really neat how it's happening. Not just happen, but happening.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Usually with me though, I'm very visual, and when I'm coming up with a character, I'm appearance driven.
Okay.
So usually my characters that usually starts with I've got characters that started out in a dream
Mm-hmm.
that I've had, and then they just kind of I just started with a tiny concept, and I may end up with something totally different by the time I'm done working on it. But um, it usually starts out with the visual, and then the story gets added. You know,
Yeah.
that's just me. So, what about you?
So I'm kind of the opposite, but I guess that kind of comes with being
A writer?
A writer first.
Yeah.
They do have. I mean, I love comics since I was a wee tot. So, I do also kind of almost immediately picture what a character's visuals look like, how they look on a panel. But
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I really get down into is the character's spine, which is if you're pre-writing, a spine essentially serves as an outline for anything that's not, the actual outline. So it's just whatever makes up the core or the backbone of whatever you're describing. So, you might drop the spine of a city, like what are its major economic things, what kind of people reside there. With the character, when you're doing their spine, you're thinking of their core traits, and usually you can distill that into 3 big traits, and then you'll find the nuance and all the little things that make them feel more human as those traits kind of mesh together. But you can usually think about like the main thing that's propelling them. What's the main thing they want to do, and what would drive that? What's the main thing that's holding them back, and how do they primarily view other people in relation to that? So, you might have someone who is more hopeful, but they're also naive, and because of that, they're a bit more bubbly and open with other people. And then you can kind of go from there and really flesh out how their dialogue would sound, how they'd make specific choices, why they'd make those choices, and just the little niches that kind of fit into like, well, if they do all these things, what if they, also had a weird affinity for dogs or whatever, so they also had like some dog person personality, and you can really kind of build their small features out from there. So when I'm creating a character or doing my part to design characters, that's where I start. My first paragraph in their in the character Bible is, their spine, what makes them who they are in terms of their personality. And then from there, I'll adjust the visuals that I had kind of envisioned to match that. So with Wolf Hunter, oh, by the way, our credits: writer, creator, Wolf Hunter, writer, co-creator of upcoming, as of yet undisclosed project.
I am doing the art or doing the pencil inking for Night Rise, also on Trump's Book 3, and another project that I don't know if it's been announced, so I'm not going to say.
That's right.
So also creator of board games, card games, and I have published my own comic in the past, but it's years ago.
Yes.
But anyway.
So, working on those, from those spines, then I'll go and refine the visuals to match what I had. And Wolf Hunter, working with AJ Cassetta, working.
Now, when you say spines, what do you mean by that?
So that's the major features that make up the backbone of the character in terms of their personality. So. Yeah. Their major driving characteristic, or if you're a hero's journey, it's their major positive characteristic. Their setback characteristic, or their major flaw, and then their I call it their social characteristics. You can kind of think of like their charisma score, like how do they interact with people and why do they do that. So or if they're bubbly, or if they're more stoic, are they domineering, or are they more supportive, and because. You might think if you have a big bad, they're going to be more domineering, but, sometimes it's more interesting to have a character like, almost like Mr. Sinister, where they're evil and manipulative, but they're very supportive of people in the way they go about it. So I'm, I go from that, refine their visual characteristics. In Wolf Hunter, I gave AJ the spine and the idea for the visuals. He did this a bunch of same thing where he came back to me with concept art. It was almost like an immediate, like I didn't have any notes back. I'm like, no, that's exactly what I had in mind. That's perfect. With the that was very like cut and dry. With the current book that I'm the co-creator of, the reason I'm the co-creator is because all the visuals are kind of being designed by the artist on hand. So I came up with like, this is kind of like the idea of what would be cool for them to use, or like, this is their style of equipment, but it's very high concept. So they're the one who's actually creating like, what would this equipment look like in this universe, and they're going through and actually creating all the visuals for everything. So where I'm creating the world and the story there, he's really creating the actual like practical like what you see of the world. And it's really really cool to be working on kind of both ends, where I have a bit more control of the words on page go directly to ink on page, as opposed to this where it's really kind of working in tandem to create something different. So I like both. I like both ways of going about it. It's cool having a bit more control, but also like you said, working in tandem, creating something that's kind of not entirely your own. It's kind of like it's jazz. It's comic book jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're both submitting to a little bit of chaos to create something that's much more than...
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking, because sometimes when you do art, and some of the most interesting art is stuff that just kind of accidentally happens. It's not something that you calculated. You know what? Dean says this all the time. Some stuff, when it's too calculated, it just... It's not as interesting somehow, but it is just so awesome because you don't seem to get tired of it as easy either, because you didn't do it. I mean, it's fresh because you didn't 100% do it and know everything about it, and it's kind of its own thing. A lot of times artists. Even fine artists, they start with something, they have an idea, and then they start doing it, and it doesn't come out exactly the way they were picturing it, but it's, it ends up becoming something on its own, which is good. That, that's, you just kind of get into the process and it just comes out, and that's awesome when that happens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's for to talk about this subject. I feel like it's really important to have both, a person who's a writer first and a person who's an artist first, because it, especially in comics, when you really get into like the stuff that really stands out, stuff that's really unique, it is that combination of both, or that little bit of, splitting down the middle.
I think it is so good to have both perspectives present, because me being an artist and kind of a writer, and somebody else being a writer and kind of an artist, or having a visual, a pretty particular idea in their head. Sometimes those things kind of, if you go at it and you're the artist, you may go too visual, and not have enough meat, enough substance behind the visuals, to keep somebody around. Whereas, sometimes, with the writing aspect of it, sometimes you can write too much and not have enough, visuals, or leave enough room for the visuals. One thing I always say is, and I'm no expert. I am no expert, but I do layouts and stuff. And one thing that you really want to do is you want to... For one thing I like to have on every page is I don't have to have a splash panel. I don't have to have a huge panel, but there's got to be some sort of money shot panel.
Yeah.
And there's got to be, there's a lot of design involved, and it's got to be able to work visually. And so when there's just some pages where you're going to have a lot of story, a lot of dialogue to get to some of these things, but you need to, anytime you can, you need to try to give up for some visuals and see a straight up writer sometimes may not think of that or have a full understanding of it. But then again, if you have an artist writing a comic, he may try to go too visual. I know that we were talking about some comics that some artists have done in the past, and you flip through them, and there'll be all these interesting, super duper good, all this good artwork, all this good design, but there's only like 3 panels, and that may be good every now and then, but the problem with that is it's lacking story, and you get through that comic and it's like you've been cheated.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough story there. I mean, and your story hasn't really progressed that much because you've only been putting 3 and 4 panels every page, So that's what happens when you give an artist the reins too much, So it's so good to have both the artist and the writer to, be able to kind of hash these things out, work it out.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting kind of talking about that, since the last 2 things that I've written, Wolf Hunter and this thing that's currently being worked on, I won't say I got too righty, but it definitely falls more into the 2 different ends of the spectrum with that.
The balance.
And that's the way the characters lend themselves to. Also, after you make your characters, you find they lend themselves to certain types of stories more than the other. So, whereas Wolf Hunter is a bit more chewy, there's a lot of like dialogue and development to get through. So it's like a 16-ounce ribeye. Whereas this current project, it's a classic double-decker cheeseburger, right? So
yeah.
They're both good and they're both great, and like you used to absolutely have at least one of each in a lifetime. But sometimes you're in the mood for that really like chewy spy story, or sometimes you want that classic American hero story.
Yeah,
that's not really. It's
and,
spoilers. It's Roman, not American.
Right. So, I mean, that's another thing to consider too, though, is there's different kinds of readers, and some of them lean visual, and some of them lean, more. I love the art in this book. You hear reviews sometimes. I love the art in this book, but there's just not enough here. There's just not enough story.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand that. There's different readers. Just like that, some are more visual and less story. I am less story driven when I read comics, but I'm an artist, so
yeah.
I am looking and studying the art. Every now and then I kind of study, at the very last, I'll go through a comic, I'll go through it once, looking at all the art, then I'll really go through it looking at the art.
Yeah.
And then, of course, somewhere in there, I start reading, and I'll read it to the end by accident. I just, you get interested and you read it. But then I'm like, picking out cues, how this writer did this and how that writer did that. And, some people, but I am visual first. Other people are like, writing first.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I definitely think that if you're finding that balance of both, and like, even if you're a writer, just doing like your own like little weird thumbnails, it can definitely help.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes also the artist does appreciate that because they're able to get more in sync with what you have in mind.
Definitely, any kind of description that you can give to help them out. I do that kind of thing for a living. I do graphic art during the day for t-shirt screen printing, and we do college, high school mascots, anything you come to the company with and you say, I want all this stuff, any kind of description or even a picture that you've seen that, hey, anything that you can provide is really helpful, because if you just leave it up to the artist, then he's got to pull it out of the air. There's no telling what you're going to come up with. I mean, I mean, it may look really good or it may not, and he's
Yeah.
put in a lot of work in because you didn't really,
Yeah, and so then at that point, that's where feedback really comes in handy. So when you're working on a team, especially in the creation process, you have to be. I mean, obviously, you want to have like some sort of like decency when you're acting with people, but you want to spread the feedback liberally. It's like bacon bits, pie liberally. You just kind of want to like as much as you can to shotgun out to help improve where you guys are going.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you gotta be able to give a little too. There may be some stuff that maybe you think might be better, and you just got to talk about that stuff. And so far, I mean, there has been just a few. There was changes on some stuff here and there. Make his tail longer, make his tail shorter. Let's see how it looks like this and like that. I don't mind all that stuff. I do that stuff every day.
Yeah.
You can't get an idea though as an artist and get married to it, and because it's got to be able to change, because you're working in a group setting. So
yeah, and
probably same way for a writer as well.
Same goes for a writer, because sometimes you'll get an artist who'll come back and say like, "What you told me makes no sense," or or you'll get, or when you're working with your editor, you'll get no back saying like, this character, it's like the way you describe them, they're a non-person, or we'll say something like, this choice does not jive with the person you're telling me they are, or they'll give you some more things on like the way you're creating this person is not the way this person would act in real life. And so really kind of being open to the fact that you have to make changes to everything. And then also it really comes down to also the obviously we're working with like bigger than life people. You have a giant dude with a Mordekaiser helmet at the head of an army of the dead. But there still is, you have to be some level of like honesty or truth to it, and that you have like, to the character, this is what is honest to that character. And so as a writer, you have to be honest to what that character would do. So that's what some people didn't like about man, I'm trying to think of recent studies. The Taskmaster in the Black Widow movie. It's interesting, but it's not that character. And and then the way they executed, they could have made that Taskmaster interesting, but the choices or lack thereof really kind of seemed dishonest in the face of all the different input they're given. That didn't seem like they thought of their own output as very much like they're doing this because the plot demands it.
Or like shows and even comics too, whenever they intentionally make somebody suddenly an idiot as a plot device to move the story somewhere else, or to make something happen that wouldn't normally happen, when that character is not that dumb. That character's already proven. I mean, people make mistakes, but
right,
the character's already proven they're more shrewd than that. But here what we've done is use the character, and I really hate it when they start doing that, because it seems like it becomes like the default for them to go to, to start moving story elements in. Is by making them make stupid decisions or something, or all of a sudden they become impulsive and something goes wrong, and now we've got a new problem to solve. It kind of reeks to me of filler when they do that kind of stuff. This is where the filler comes in.
I was just reading something recently, actually, and they had a moment like that. I'm like, would they really do that? I can't remember what it was. Probably because I just, intentionally blocked it out of my mind. But and I think that's also where having that character spine really comes in for continuity.
Yes.
If you work, there's a reason why everyone loves Batman. It's because he's been consistent for 80 years now. Because
that's why I think it's funny in these movies where they've got him with all these guns and killing people, and it's like, dude, that's not Batman.
But the comics, he's been fairly consistent. The reason is that there's a huge Batman story Bible. So I don't think the films get it, but if you work on DC animated or if you work on DC comic, you are required to sit down with the Batman Bible and like make sure that everything is done correctly. And it has Batman's spine, which at this point is like 10 pages long, but it says like these are all the choices he would make, and this is what informs it. So you're allowed to play within these guidelines because that's what's honest to the character. But even if it's just something you're working on by yourself, you know, you don't want to do any J.K. Rowling retconning. It is having that spine on hand and also sharing that spine with your artist and your editor so they can keep you honest. And like, you get notes back like, no, they don't do this.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
You know, being accountable. That's being accountable to somebody. You know, kind of letting them in the circle.
Yeah.
So that they can stop you from doing something crazy.
Yeah. And it's just always going back to like what drives this character, and what what drive them, what make them not want to move in the situation, what might potentially paralyze them. Having all kind of that thought out, as a writer's perspective when it comes to creating characters is going to help you out, you know, several runs down the line. And you can change things. Like obviously, if one character has the same flaw the entire way through, they'd be a very boring character, but you know, you always change it. Like, okay, what changed that flaw and how would they react when something matches that previous stimuli? Yeah. And I think that's why Buffy had the success it did. Is as the characters, you know, the supporting characters were kind of meh early on, but everyone else, you know, they had flaws and they grew past them, but then developed kind of newer flaws as a result of that. But there's always that, you know, everything was always kind of based on what came before and how a character would grow from that. It wasn't just either having them being stagnate or having them develop something out of the blue. It was all based on learned experience.
I think that was probably the first show that I started like watching shows, like especially binge watching and buying the DVDs, because at the time, you know, there was not really Netflix or any of that kind of stuff, so you actually had to buy the DVDs. That was the first one, and I think that's the first show ever, I think, that started me binge watching anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. On YouTube again, Stephen Brown, you can't just have the character do something because it fits the story, it also has to fit the character. Exactly. Yeah, it's all about and you know, having strong plot is important, because if you just have characters not doing without a plot, then you have a really boring French film. And that's not, you know, there are good French films, but there are the potential for boredom in a French film is exponentially higher. But if you haven't seen The Untouchables, the original French version, watch it. But
I haven't seen that.
It's good. It's about a caretaker, essentially. Being shown the meaning of living by coming to work for a well-off disabled gentleman, and it's
yeah, you know, those disabled folks. You never know about them.
It definitely is one of those things where it's, you know, the meeting of two unlikely perspectives. You can't change your justice that fit story. Yeah. And so having like a good plot is important because, you know, that helps things right forward. But your character and your plot need to interact in a way that is honest to the way the character would react, and to the way that the other people involved in the plot would demand, not the plot itself. So just having someone do something because it needs to be done, it feels cheap and lazy. But, you know, if something forces someone to do something out of their comfort zone and you can actually see that stress on them, then you add on a new layer of depth of this character is having a growing moment, and because it's a moment of they need to and they don't want to. Good examples are really any sort of young adult story, or even Han Solo in Star Wars, being the rogue drifter, picking up a quest to go rescue the princess would not be in his, you know, modus operandi, but the plot, the people moving out plot, where, you know, he's in life-threatening debt, he has the potential to get out of that, and he's suddenly forced to do something or forced into a situation that he does not want to be on. He's kind of like, well, you know what? Gonna grab life by the horns and roll the dice, see what happens. So you see Han Solo do something that wouldn't necessarily be in his normal character, but because he has that growing moment of, it's like, well, I need to do it. I guess I just have to like bite down and get through it. And so, it also having those limitations on what your character would and wouldn't do then allows you to have some really smart writing when it comes to forcing them to do something new. So another interesting thing is how we kind of talked about that in terms of, characters' personalities, their motives, or their traits might change over the lifetime of a story. We also do see that also in a lot of times their visual representation, especially in like Marvel comics, where people get a new costume every 5 years. But
yeah.
But in other stuff, people might change as things go on, either battle damage or they feel like they need a new costume or setup, or Gandalf the Grey becomes Gandalf the White. So as an artist, when it comes to those, mid-series changes or however, what do you think informs those decisions? What do you think works? What do you think comes off as forced or cheesy? As like in a visual sense.
Forced or cheesy? I don't really know about that. I know that as a character progresses, like toward darker sides, of course, when they're all happy and jovial, everything seems, I would probably make them a little more shiny, a little more well kept, their clothes or armor or whatever equipment would be cleaner, and but then as they kind of get a little bit more, I don't know, into the darkness a little bit, then things start getting a little worn on their costumes, outfits, whatever. Things get a little dented and broken. Sometimes they, a little dingy, a little grungy. But that's just how I've seen it, or how I depict stuff like that. But as far as cheesy, what do you mean exactly?
I was saying,
Give me an example.
Example. Well, I'd say, I don't know if I have exactly off the top of my head, but it's kind of the idea, you might have a moment where a character goes through a significant change, so they change their visual appearance changes in some way. And, if that matches the point, that can be like a really powerful moment where it kind of presents himself almost as a new character. But do you ever see, like, there's moments where it almost feels like kind of forced, like, well, why are you just doing that?
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. I think probably one of my biggest pet peeves in any movie or show is when they skip ahead and like they're like this and this side, and then they come back and they're like there's like this huge character progression that went on that you never even saw, and that seems a little forced. I don't know, and I know they did this just because they thought they were going to have more seasons, and then they didn't. But did you ever see the show? It was a Joss Whedon show after Buffy and after Angel. He did The Dollhouse.
I actually
called The Dollhouse.
I've only seen a little bit.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a great show, but I started watching it. I kept on watching it. And I don't know, that show started out as like these people who were mind wiped, and then they would download stuff into them, and then the company would rent them out for whatever it was. They could be renting them out as an assassin. They could be renting them out as a call girl or a call guy or whatever. And then they would bring them back in after the job was over, mind wipe them, and... then the next thing, so on and so forth. Anyway, I think because they were getting canceled when the third season hit, all of a sudden we're in the future.
Oh yeah.
And like it's 10 years later, and it's like, what? You just come on, man. You just should have just cut it off. Went with the stuff that you were doing, and
Mm-hmm.
it just went way off the rails. The whole thing was just forced, and I don't even know what the guy was thinking. But I mean, nobody when they came back for the third season was who they were, in the first two seasons. So it's pretty much like watching a new show.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
I actually I did have something come to mind in terms of a good example of a character's visual change, and that's gonna be Daniel Bryan from Stargate SG-1, which I don't know if you're familiar at all with that, but
What? Oh yes,
Yeah.
I am a Stargate. Yeah, but I don't remember. Is he the one that they picked up off? Is he the one that replaced Daniel Jackson?
I know Daniel Jackson's the one I was thinking of. Yes, yeah. I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know where I got Bryan. Daniel Bryan's a wrestler. That's where I got it. Daniel Jackson. Yeah. So, there's a moment where essentially he dies and he meets with the beings that run the afterlife.
The ancients or something like that. Yeah, they're ascended.
Yeah, and he goes through this whole thing where before he was still military but very nerdy, and very kind of anxious about a lot of things. So he had a lot of tics, and he had these big old glasses. You do see this play out for the course of a season, and then it happens again and again where he has to learn new things by going back to this place. But he comes back after several episodes of us seeing him learn, stuff that helps him as a character and stuff that he needs to know in order to progress the plot, but things that are genuine life lessons. And he comes back, and his wardrobe has changed. It's much more, it's less military style bulk. Yeah, it's more so kind of open roby type stuff most of the time. He loses the glasses, and he loses a lot of his twitchiness because he's a lot more thoughtful about things because he's had this time to really reflect and grow. And I think that was a really well done change because it wasn't super drastic. He didn't come back glowing in white. It was just kind of a subtle change of wardrobe and a slight twist of a characteristic, and it had a lot of build up to that payoff. So it made sense in the way it presented itself.
Yeah, definitely. If they would have pushed him any faster down that road, though, it would not have been good because he had to come a long way from where he was. Because the Daniel Jackson in the movie, they pretty much pegged him pretty good in the TV show.
Yeah.
Whenever they, of course, switched from James Spader to what's his name?
That's David Shanks, I think his name is something like that.
Yes, Shanks.
Yeah.
And he did a really good job of bringing that character from the big screen to the small screen. But yeah, he still had all those tics, as you called him, and he was a bit nerdy, bit smart, and and then by the time that show is done, what is it, 9, 10 seasons, something like that. He was he knew his way around a battlefield and weapons and everything.
Yeah. On YouTube again.
Love that show.
It's so good. Every time when someone would create a character and the character would either instantly the smart person rolled or instantly have a high ranking act like and that's wow. That's a Mary Sue trope. That's a character trope called a Mary Sue where they come in just and they're the pinnacle of everything they could need to be in that universe. That's why people didn't like Rey in the new Star Wars, is she popped in immediately more skilled in the Force than Luke or Anakin was after years of training.
Kind of like what they were trying to do with Captain Marvel. Just all of a sudden here's this hero that's just gonna fix everything. She's uber powerful, and she's just gonna take down Thanos, and not good.
Yeah. For those character yeah, or characters that affect Dirk, but they don't tell us why. And yeah, there are some characters that they have like hidden baggage, but you really need to sell that there is hidden baggage. It can't just be that your main character is a raging butthole and we don't know why. That's why I end up developing some unlike.
Well, I think with characters, they have to have a progression, and it has to be. It doesn't have to be slow. If it's done right, it can be sped up at times. But because people care about those characters, they like the character, they like everything about the character. So you can't suddenly change stuff about the character because it ceases to be the character that they liked.
Yeah.
So when you do it too fast, you lose people. They're like, I'm done with this. That's kind of why I just got to where I got probably 4 seasons and then a couple here and there shows of Walking Dead because I just couldn't stand it anymore. There was just too much, from way over here. Some people love that, from way over here to all the way over here. First we're trying to help people and we're even killing our own friends because they're the way that he ended up becoming. I'm talking about the main guy. I can't remember his name.
Oh, yeah.
Rick Grimes.
Yeah.
Killed his own friend. His own friend was what he ended up becoming by the 4th season. I just, I don't know. But people have to experience it, and it has to make sense when they grow and when they change, and they'll stay with it as long as that's as long as that's the case. But if you start trying to push things a little too far too quickly, then it ceases to be the character that they love, and so they don't really have any skin in the game anymore.
Yeah. One of my most recent experiences with the characters that have, are really well done progression that's not as long is actually Far Cry 5. To start playing through that. But
Played 3.
Yeah, 3's good. But I played through 5, and a lot of the mission givers, you only really interact with them like 2 or 3 missions in an area before that kind of wraps up their storyline. But the writing for them is just so well done that you really get to know these people in the little bit you talk to them. And so there's one character who you do 2 missions for, and then things work out in a way that they end up dying. And time-wise, it's certainly not a whole lot of time actually spent with them, but you're like, it impacts you in a way. You're like, oh, why does this sting a little bit? But because they just do it in such a way that you see them, you see how they develop, even if they develop a little quickly, you see exactly why they're why they're motivated to do that development, and exactly why their development to make the choices they do, and what gets them into that position. And so I think you're certainly room and space to obfuscate or hide things from the audience. That's kind of what thrillers are built on, and in my book Wolf Hunter, there's a lot of people who lie to the audience. But you see a lot of that. I try to do my best to throw in a lot of hints in the way they talk to why exactly that might be, even though I don't tell you directly outright. It's because it needs to be honest to those characters, but it still needs to be honest to the audience.
Here's a good question. Or you probably need to read a comment, huh? Or were you?
I got a comment on there. I'm not exactly sure who we're talking about. The commander who belittled the pilot in Star Wars. No one knew who she was, but she's instantly a hero. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure who that is, but anything like that where there's was that Odo, whoever, or Holdo. Yeah, I mean that entire movie. There was no there. Was it The Last Jedi? There was no character development. It was just people who existed in one space and did things, and then, yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing. You know, I am not even like a schooled writer, but you know,
Yeah.
holy moly, man, there's so many mistakes. You know, that's what I was fixing to ask. What do you think when a character you love just gets unceremoniously killed?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is awful. You know, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, I mean, it depends, because I think there does need to be a little bit of, like, build up to it, but in terms of, like, doing that well, I think you can have a quick or unceremonious death of characters you know and love if you do it the way George R. R. Martin does it, where you kind of immediately introduce this world and you're told, like, by the way, no one is safe here. People are going to die frequently, and people here are very smart, and they're going to find ways to do it in ways that are, like, very brutal or with, like, as little blowback on them as possible. And you know, you do that by killing someone quick and getting in and out. So it sucks, but watching Ned Stark get killed at the end of the first book, you're like, oh man, that sucks. But you see the signs the entire way through. Like you you already knew the rules of the book by the time you're halfway through. That, like, oh, George is, like, he's going to kill him. There's no way out for this. There's no heroic escape. This is very much just a world where it's people who are very smart trying to be very mean to each other.
and I don't mind, you know, a good, but you remember, you know, with Ned Stark, you know, his death kind of, you know, it had a lot of consequences, you know.
Yeah.
But then when they just, like, kill somebody off, and then that's, you know, oh, well, they're dead and we forget about them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, that is not a good, I mean, send off. That's not a good, you know, that's what I call just unceremonious, just killing somebody for the sake of killing them.
Yeah.
It's, you know, like their death really just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And I hate that.
Yeah. Since we're talking about Star Wars, in the comments, the new trilogy, as much as I don't like it, you do get two examples of what I think is a good death and what I think is a bad death. In terms of the good death, you have the way Han Solo dies, where he makes a conscious decision to go out and try to save his son, because that's the man that he is now. He's like, he's my family, god dang it, I'm going to try to do what I can, even if it gets me killed. So he knows the consequences. We have this scene where he's, you know, he willingly makes this choice to, you know, be there for his son, even though it means he's going to die. And maybe we get the full, like, emotional impact of that situation, both for Kylo and for Han. And then, even though it's not a great movie, that gets paid off in the Rise of Skywalker. I forgot what it's called. Where Kylo's at the point where he's at a crossroads trying to figure out, like, who he is, and he sees his father again, and knows that he's the one who killed him, but that his father was a man who didn't like, wouldn't hold a grudge. He'd come out and, like, try to, like, meet him again even after he killed him. So he's like, that's the person I want to be. I want to be like my dad. But then you have Luke's death, where he gets tired, I guess. And then that's it. No more Luke.
Yeah.
He just gets tired.
I'm just gonna float away, guys. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. Say, like Han was the best part of the sequel series, even though he's in it for very little. But
I just hate that they couldn't get on screen together. I mean, that's what everybody was excited for them to be coming back for. You know, to see the band back together, at least for, you know, a scene.
Yeah.
Man, we couldn't even get that.
Yeah.
You know?
I was hoping that they would have, like, taken, like, any of the existing material at all, like do the Black Hand of the Empire series, where we introduce Mara Jade. So Han gets with Leia, Luke gets with Mara after Mara tries to kill him several times. Or do like the Dark Empire, where we get, if they want to do Cloney Palpatine, Dark Empire was some perfectly good Cloney Palpatine stories.
Yeah, multiple.
Yeah, but no, yeah, they just kind of they didn't adhere to the Bible or to the spine that was laid out before them.
Yep.
Yeah. Agent Cub. Quentin is working on Nightrise. I believe this is the banner profile for the Facebook page. This is kind of their marketing thing.
Yep.
Who are the characters you're working on?
These are, I don't know how much I want to say, but I think I can say these are the Dark Souls. Just some of them anyway. If you notice, they all kind of look a little bit different. They're not just undead. Some of them look pretty human. Some of them look, but they're all very dark. If you could think maybe a little demonic, but not really demons. They're not demons. They're just creatures.
Yeah.
Dark creatures.
And
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls. Yes, this book is going to be published by Silverline, and these creatures will be in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot more too. There's a lot more of them than just this. This is just a sampling of what the army looks like. There's small ones. There's big ones. There's goblins that are part of this army. There's like all kinds of, all kinds of different races mixed in with them. Yeah. So.
And we've done fantasy before, like we've done Cray, which I did some of the marketing for, but I think this is truly our first foray into like a dark fantasy, almost, at least in appearance wise. Yeah.
There is a lot of darkness, but also some humor. Believe it or not, it's not like all. How Lord of the Rings tends to be. It tends to be very dismal. They at least there is some character stuff, because some of the characters are young.
Mm-hmm.
There's some shenanigans and stuff, but it is dark, but it's not super dark like all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, no. Did you pencil this as well, or are you just doing the inks?
I did the pencils and the inks. You notice my pencils are very loose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the good things about drawing digitally is you can erase your ink marks. So I pretty much just do something like this, and then I pull out all the details when I'm doing the ink. So, because you can erase the ink so easily, it's just not a issue at all. Whereas, if I was doing this traditionally, it would just be a nightmare.
Oh yeah. Once it's on the page, it's done. You gotta commit.
Oh yeah. There's no going back. Well, that's how he looks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cat's doing something right there. So I'm very excited for this story. So we have been talking about character creation for comics from the writing perspective, from the art perspective. We talked about the initial creation, kind of some of the thoughts that go into that, as well as the, maintaining that character identity as, the character progresses or ages and time goes on. So since we're kind of talking about, different flavors of genres such as fantasy or dark fantasy, obviously you're going to have characters kind of fit similar archetypes, but have different flavors therein. So, someone might be more the manipulator type character, but they might be more imposing and like physically prominent, such as Mr. Sinister, or they might be a bit more nondescript or kind of very plain and like kind of the chameleon style manipulator, kind of like Lex Luthor pre-robot suit, or Kingpin, who's a little bit of both. So from your perspective as the artist, when you're kind of thinking up the different flavors of character, how someone might fit into one type or the other, but also what makes them unique, what's their special, what's their mouthfeel? How do you get that umami going? What's your thought process there designing the visuals of a character like that?
Well, I try so hard to try not to follow tropes. I try, you have to follow archetypes, but tropes to me anyway is when something has totally been done a little too well. I wouldn't say too much. I just mean like in this story, we don't want to have a Wolverine,
right?
Or Sabretooth or Superman. We don't want to have, but a lot of times some characters may try to, take that position, or like these shows on TV, there's always, I was watching a video the other day about the CW shows, how that all of them are set up the same way. They have the brains, which is always some awkward, geeky nerd, that's super smart. And, then you got the more athletic or military guy. And then you've got the brooding type hero, And they showed Arrow and they showed Flash and they showed side by side the characters. It was kind of hilarious because it was like the same show, with the same characters. But with these guys, I really just try to go with whatever looks cool. It sounds super simple, and it kind of is. I'm just trying to be. I'm just, I do something that really looks cool. I am focused on the visual, and of course, because Mackenzie is the writer, I try to just take whatever she gives me and try to make it look as awesome, as I can. What looks awesome to me? I don't know what looks awesome to others, but I know this is the kind of thing that I've wanted to see. Sometimes I watch stuff and I just think, man, if they could have just went a little bit farther, with this or that. This is a good concept, but it just didn't really go all the way. But I mean, I still like it, but so really that's all I can say is just whatever looks cool, and is what I try to do.
Yeah.
Because this is a visual medium, and this guy right here, he's kind of like the head of stuff. So obviously, he's going to be bigger and a little more kitted out. These guys are more the minion type, soldier, infantry, whatever. And I've just decided I'm going to do them all different. That way there's no samishness to them, So she liked that idea, and so that's kind of what we went with. At first it was just going to be this is going to be the main Dark Soul, and then all the other Dark Souls like this one's going to look like that, and we'll have maybe 5 different ones, and all those will just look like each other, but somewhere along the line, it just got to be where every one of them will be its own individual appearance,
Yeah.
Which I think is cool too.
Absolutely. I think that's sort of take is also why a lot of people got into the Morlocks and X-Men, is the fact that they were all their own unique person. It wasn't just a bunch of faceless Sentinels. Yeah, and I think at least the smallest thing you can do is just give them their own unique physical appearance, even if they don't have like their own lines or their own whatever. Just kind of make it clear that this is, it's its own army full of a bunch of different creatures in it. It's not just copy pasted.
Well, it'll be very obvious that these guys are Dark Souls. That sometimes that's a consideration you have to make, is them getting mixed in, because they all look different, them getting mixed in with other people. But these guys, probably one of the defining traits that they all will share is kind of like the armor and weaponry type, and some certain cues that that this is part of the Dark Souls, because it could be designs on armor. It could be I don't know if you notice, like these weapons here, kind of how they're shaped is kind of everything is kind of sharp, and that's one key way that you'll know when you look at them. Hey, that's Dark Soul, and you'll be able to know immediately. And a lot of their stuff's all messed up and worn because they're going. Well, I won't say that, but they're doing a lot of stuff. Okay, they're doing a lot of stuff all the time.
Lots of fighting, a lot of time to sharpen everything.
Yeah. And so whereas other people, I can probably show. I will show one of the good characters. And this is, let's see, no, this is a character in the story right here. You notice how his stuff looks a lot different, a lot more round, a lot more regal, So, so yeah, these, there's a clear difference between them and, these dark guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, from a writing perspective, when you have characters that kind of fit similar archetypes, I don't, in Wolf Hunter, I don't have any, strict warrior types because it's more spy story, like just about everyone fits the sage archetype in some way, but they all do it in a different way. So I had to think about how would different characters be thoughtful in different ways. And so it's based on the Tizzard mission, and this isn't really spoiling anything because everyone already knows the name of the main character, as well as the researcher who went on the Tizzard mission, which is Henry Bowen, and the main character of Wolf Hunter is James Willard. But they're both designed to be different types of thinker style characters, whereas Bowen is a lot more theory, and he's very passionate about the way that things work and how he thinks about things. So he's a lot more bubbly, and I make a joke about he's very Welsh, because the Welsh people are known for kind of talking and rambling and being very kind of friendly immediately once you get to know them. But Willard is before he got brought into British intelligence, he's a fighter pilot. So he's very cool, calm, collected under pressure. He speaks when he needs to, a lot of times, but most of the times he's thinking and analyzing in his head. So we see that they will vocalize different about different things in different ways. And where one thing will frighten Bowen, Willard will be fine with it. And where Willard may get lost on some technical aspects, Bowen is more than happy to explain it all. And so there are different ways you can
wait for Wolf Hunter.
Yeah,
I can't wait for it.
There are different ways you can talk about. You can have people who fit similar archetypes also act differently as the writer. You have Faramir and Boromir both fit the warrior archetype, but Boromir's more hot-headed and ready to action and wanting to do everything that he can immediate. Whereas
another Sean Bean character.
Yep. Sean Bean, of course, patron saint of Silverline, next to Nicolas Cage and Del Taco.
Yeah. Yep.
But Faramir is a lot more, he's the strategist style warrior, where he is going to be thinking about what's best for everyone in the long run, what's going to be the most optimal strategy. But he's not going to hesitate to leap into action when he's needed to either. So both, similar archetypes, but presented in very different ways. Stephen Brown is heading to sleep. Oh, have a good night, sir. We got a little bit longer here. We'll see how things go. And then
Thanks for coming by and commenting, talking with us some.
absolutely, yeah. Thanks for commenting. Everything you put in the YouTube chat does go to help the algorithm.
It does. Yep.
Remember to also like, subscribe, share, tell all your friends about us. If you have access to your roommate's Alexa, just start playing us in the background.
Yep. That's what you should do.
Alrighty. So we are about at the end of what I have pre-prepared, so I'm going to open up a little bit here. Quentin, when it comes to character design, either going over again what we already talked about, or if you have anything else you want to add, what are some things that you think about when it comes to designing characters, visually or as like any sort of way, visually, writing, whatever?
Well, I usually try to. Well, it's I guess not always. Sometimes I like the way a lot of stuff looks that I've seen. Sometimes I make a mishmash of it. But a lot of the times, I try to do something a little different. So I try to make things a little different. That way, it is unique, and it can be separated easily from other stuff. As far as like color, that's a big thing. I think that the job that Jim Lee did back in the '90s with the X-Men.
Oh yeah.
The colors were just, I mean, amazing. The way they were distributed. I mean, he lined these guys up, or they did, and they did the colors based on that, how they look together, not just how they look individually. I think that's such a cool idea. And ever since I heard that, anytime I have an opportunity to do that or have to do that, that's my go-to. Is if you got a group, you need to look at the designs as a group, and not just individually, and then put them together. Because it does make a difference. It does make a real difference with people. I know with me it did. Whenever I see, I mean, they just their costumes and stuff, and putting their figures together, they're just bleeding awesome, appearance wise. But that's pretty much it. I thought that was really good. That may help somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. We had something we didn't really talk about too much is creating the ensemble, and obviously comics feature a lot of ensembles. Although now with things being more indie, we're seeing a lot more focus on individual persons. But creating an ensemble from the writer's side, it's that same thing where you have to think about it as the group. You can't just have a group of Wolverines. I mean, it's certainly fun.
Yeah.
It's fun for a one shot if you just want to have Murder Fest, and that was that one shot where it was just Cable, Deadpool, Warpath, Domino, like everyone who had no qualms about stabbing someone.
Yeah. Yep.
But that same thing where the way Stan thought about the X-Men, where you have Wolverine, how he works with Scott, how he works with Jean, how Jean works with all these different people featuring there, Havoc, Angel, and each person offers their own either archetype or process to the way they think. So you can certainly have two warrior types if they have them, but if they present themselves differently. But having two hot-headed warriors, it's gonna be. If you ever play D&D, you know that it's a nightmare to get anything done if you have two hot-headed barbarians in the party.
Yep. Oh man. Yeah.
But you're gonna want you might have one hot-headed fighter type or warrior type. Complement them with a cool-headed leader or thinker or something.
Yeah,
like
the
that.
ones that's always quick to let's kill him. Everybody's like, let's kill him. Let's take all his stuff.
Yep.
wait. It's good to have another person in there to say, we can't kill him,
Yeah.
instead of everybody, going in for the kill.
Absolutely.
But there is books that I want to read that I have never read just because of the personalities they've put together.
Oh yeah.
One, in fact, that I'm thinking about is Thunderbolts. There was a Thunderbolts. I've never read it.
Mhm.
I want to. It's the Thunderbolts where the team was made up of the Red Hulk, Punisher, Deadpool, Elektra, Ghost Rider.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I want to, and also, what was it? It was one of the Venoms. The Flash, Venom. What was he? Agent Venom.
Agent Venom. Oh, Agent Venom was one of my favorite takes on the character too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get that series, and I want to read it.
Yeah.
Really bad. Really bad.
Yeah. I mean, Thunderbolts, anything like that, where the Thunderbolts that I read and I liked it was the one with Winter Soldier, Atlas, Mechanica, and any type that you can get a way to mesh unique styles of characters together where they're designed to not work together. That's how you get some of the best drama too.
That team has been changed up, so much. I mean, they have like an entirely new roster.
Yeah.
I think it was after the Civil War. They had the Scorpion as the Venom, and they had like Mockingbird and Gold. I can't remember her name, but it's totally different. It's Baron Zemo.
Yes.
You remember this at all? Yeah. And I've often wanted to read those, but I just never have. It's always been X-Men or not so much the Avengers, but Spider-Man, Wolverine, those.
Yeah. And then also having, there's a bunch of different ways to think about different things. One that I like is having characters that work too well together becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And that's like Chamber and Sync, where Sync can copy Chamber, in Generation X, Sync could copy Chamber's abilities so well that Chamber did not like it. It's like, why are you better than me at this? And, you can think about with your right ensemble, don't just have them be like super buddy team all the time. I think that's kind of what some people think of Justice League, and there have certainly been some bad Justice League runs where that's the case, but with an ensemble, you're going to have a bunch of different personalities. The idea is that they each should be their own person, and if you have people in that close proximity dealing in that high intensity situation for that long, and they're not a well-disciplined military unit, where they're like taught like this is going to be your life day in day out. A lot of heroes are just vigilantes.
Is that if everybody's on
the
the same page and everybody follows orders? I mean, it's good, but at the same time, it's not very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. You got a lot. That's the reason why a lot of heroes are kind of vigilantes who just get thrown into it because Punisher and Deadpool working together, it's a nightmare for Punisher. Deadpool's having the time of his life, but Punisher's like, no, just stay on mission, stay on task for Punisher, and then Deadpool's off running around just going ham crazy. And so think about how your ensemble can create conflict within themselves, and that also allows you to fill up more space if you're one of those people that has issue writing to length, where you get your A plot written out and you realize that it's 15 pages. We could have 5 pages spread throughout where two people on the team are not jiving, and that also allows for more focused character growth because typically that's going to come directly from their character flaws running head to head. So ideally, by the end of the run or whatever, both characters learn to listen and work on their flaws a little bit more. And that way you also get kind of that reward and that, you see characters work on their growth throughout the time that you as a reader spent with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Alrighty. Well, it is about 9:30 now. It's a little bit earlier than our normal time, but it's about the time we ended last week, and we are running on 2 men again.
I think that's good for two men on board.
Absolutely. And I was saying, Quentin, you've had a long day, so I'll let you hit your credits where people can find you, where they can send all their money and buy all your stuff.
Yes, buy my Get Rich Quick program. Have you have you ever wanted financial stability, independence? Well, come over to my Facebook page, and I will show you the tools that you need. I will give you the tools that you need to complete that.
Just linking, just linking posts from Dave Ramsey.
Yeah. So anyway, you can find me on Facebook, Quentin Bedwell, or Quentin J. Bedwell. Also, DeviantArt QJB. I don't post there very much. I do have Instagram, but Facebook, same thing to me. Also, I have a board game up on Relic called Relic Quest on GameCrafter.com. And that's, if you Google my name, you'll find me. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
And there's no nude pictures or anything. It's all legit.
All right. Well, if you're
I think they took those down.
right. if you're hoping your dreams are dashed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my publicist got rid of all that.
Good. If you Google my name, you find Tim Takahashi, who was an ESPN sportscaster. So, you can find me on all the social medias though at TimTKWriter, and look out for Wolf Hunter coming out later this year. You can also find me in about 10 minutes on my Twitch stream, Aggro Bacon, where I'll be streaming the new Destiny season for a few minutes here before I head off to bed.
Something as well, also on Facebook. Go over to Night Rise. Check it out. This is what I've been drawing tonight. You'll probably, by the time you get over there, you'll probably see this banner up. Just give you a quick preview. That's
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Very nice. Alrighty.
You'll get to see this piece of art complete. Good show, Tim, Mr. Tim.
Thanks to you, Quinn, and to everyone out there in cyberspace. Remember, we'll be on this channel. Well, we won't be, but other people will be. Wednesday and Sunday, 8 Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back Tuesday at 8 Pacific Standard Time.
Go up and support them. I mean, they need help. I mean, they're not us. They're not quite as good as us, but go give them some love. They try.
They don't have the same robust and tangy mouthfeel.
That's right.
Yep. And we will see you next week. Until then, make mine
Silverline.
Silverline.